Chapter 1141. You're so unreasonable. Do I deserve to die just because I haven't seen this young lady before? Sikong Fuling glared at Emolien while blowing her beard. Her eyes swiveled as she said, "You look like a decent person, but why are you so heartless? You don't even have the slightest bit of tender feelings for girls." The hidden guard at the side twitched his mouth slightly. "Do it," Emolien icily instructed. Seeing that the blade in the hidden guard's hand was about to leave a bloody mark on Sikong Fuling's face, Sikong Fuling immediately panicked and hurriedly shouted, "Hey, hey, hey! Stop, 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 stop! Hey, I say, handsome lord, what exactly do you want to know? I already told you that I really don't know her and have never seen her before." What a joke! She already knew that her elder brother was a little interested in this young lady, so of course she wouldn't trick her elder brother into helping an outsider. Humph humph, she wouldn't say it even if she knew. "You're lying." Emolien's voice sounded as though it had been scooped up from the depths of hell as it was unusually cold. "You have her scent on you." His gaze landed on this young lady in front of him, deep and frosty to the extreme. This young lady didn't seem to be a member of an orthodox sect. Her thin muslin dress had been scraped around in the forest overgrown with dead trees, and it had already become very messy by now. Even though she was wearing an outer garment, it couldn't conceal the fair skin underneath. "Sikong Fuling, take it away, take it away." Sikong Fuling pursed her small mouth and forcefully slapped away the two hidden guards' hands. She shook her body and straightened her collar as she muttered, "It's not like you have a dog's nose. Why are you so sensitive?" "Insolence." The hidden guards glared angrily as they berated in unison. Sikong Fuling jumped in fright and hurriedly patted her chest with her small hand as she whined coquettishly, "Why are you so fierce? All right, I'll tell you." Her eyes swiveled again as she suppressed the crafty glint in her eyes and said unwillingly, "Yes, I've seen that young lady. However, we've already parted ways. You've also seen it now, I'm alone." "Where did she go?" Emolien questioned. "How would I know where she went?" Sikong Fuling rolled her eyes and cried out, "That young lady was ice, cold and didn't say a word for half a day. When she left, she didn't even tell me. How would I know where she went? That wretched girl had caused her to wander around the forest in search of her. She was even afraid that she would starve to death. Just thinking about it made her angry. Since when did she, Sikong Fuling, have such rotten good intentions?" Emolien raised her hand slightly, and several hidden guards immediately rushed up to restrain Sikong Fuling. "Let's go. Leave your sister." Sikong Fuling cried out angrily, "What are you doing? What's the point of capturing me? Even if you catch me, I won't be able to make the little girl appear." "Hey, hey, 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 it hurts. My hand hurts. Stop pulling." What the F***CK, this lunatic. Just because she had come into contact with a little girl before, how crazy was she? "Lead the way. Lead the way. Brothers. I really don't know where she is." Sikong Fuling cried out in exasperation. "Let go. I'm warning you. If you don't let go, I won't be courteous anymore." A hidden guard unceremoniously slapped the back of her head. "Let's go." Sikong Fuling still wanted to resist, but she was forcefully pushed and pulled by several hidden guards, and her hands were shackled with mystic energy locking shackles. Chapter 1142. Tsuewei Mountain. Mountain ranges stacked on top of each other, stretching on endlessly. Carefree Valley was located at the bottom of Tsuewei Mountain and was covered by miasma all year round. Ordinary people could not get close. The ingenious part of Beijing Manor was that it was located in the center of Carefree Valley and was surrounded by a green lake. The manor was covered with exotic flowers and plants. Everywhere was lush and beautiful. The old madam of Beijing Manor, Ding Xian, was a great beauty whose name was known throughout the pugilistic world when she was young. The most commonly accepted legend about her was that she was hurt by love. It was said that she had once chased after the young master of the mermaid race. Who would have thought that the young hero's heart already belonged to someone else? In the end, She was trapped by love and deeply hurt, so she hid from the world and refused to see anyone. A few years later, the rumors became even more outrageous. It was said that after she was hurt by love, she casually found someone to marry. After she became pregnant, she personally killed her husband and gave birth to the young master of Beijing Manor, Ding Yun. After that family found out that their son had died an unnatural death, they launched an attack on Carefree Valley more than 10 years ago. The ending was very tragic. Hundreds of people in the family were all massacred by Beijing Manor overnight. There were even more exaggerated rumors that Ding Zian actually gave birth to twins at that time, but only one young master, Ding Yun, was announced to the public. The reason was that when the two children were 10 years old, she made them kill each other. The one who survived was the young master, and the one who died was thrown out of the valley to feed the wolves. From then on, Beijing Manor was demonized. Although it was one of the 4 great manors, it had long been removed from the ranks of the righteous path. The sun was setting in the west, and the setting sun was setting. In the pavilion in the middle of the lake sat an old monk with a white beard and white eyebrows. In front of him was a cup of high-quality tea that was emitting light smoke. 2 maidservants stood on both sides of him until a cough slowly sounded. "Madam." Ding Zian waved to the 2 maidservants, and the 2 maidservants bowed and retreated out of the pavilion. Cough, cough, cough. Ding Zian was more than 50 years old. Her cheeks were thin, and her wrinkled face was full of vicissitudes of life. She leaned on a walking stick carved from black sandalwood and slowly sat down in front of the old monk. She smiled and said, "Master, sorry to keep you waiting." The old monk stroked his beard and smiled. "Madam's body is better." Cough, cough, cough. Ding Zian chuckled. "It's been over 10 years. After taking the medicine that Grandmaster gave me, my condition has improved." The old monk nodded with a smile. "Master, you came a few days earlier than the scheduled date. Is there anything else you need to do?" "Madam, do you still remember the divination I performed for young Master Ding 15 years ago?" "Of course." Ding Zian nodded solemnly. This old monk observed the stars last night and discovered that young Master's fated star faintly emitted a fiendish red aura. Ding Zian was slightly surprised. "Do you know what it is?" "The red light is binding the fated star, indicating that the young master has already fallen into the tribulation of love." The old monk said softly, "Love tribulation?" Ding Zian was shocked. She shook her head and said, "Impossible. All these years, Yun-Er's natural disposition has been undisciplined and free. She has never been reluctant to part with any woman. How could she have fallen in love? I don't really believe it either. Although this old monk has jumped out of the secular world, I have often heard news of young Master Ding's adventures. Ever since I received Great Master's advice 15 years ago, I've been very careful. There are only a few old maidservants in the manor. Yun-Er doesn't like any of them. Could it be that in the years when young Master Ding went out to establish the demonic sect?" Chapter 1143. You mean that Sikong fooling by his side? Ding Zian shook her head. "That's even more impossible. For Yun-Er's safety, I've investigated every single one of his female subordinates," Ding Zian said with certainty. "This madam has investigated that saintess Sikong Fuling. She has always treated Yun-Er as an elder brother and nothing else. Yun-Er only sees her as a younger sister. As for those other female subordinates, they're even less worth mentioning. A few of them had designs on Yun-Er, but after Yun-Er discovered them, they were all personally executed by him. Her son had always been such a heartless child since he was young. Don't be fooled by how he laughed and joked with others all day long, as if he was very happy. In reality, he was abnormally cold and indifferent. He didn't even have the slightest bit of affection for his own mother. As a result, the number of times he returned home these past few years had gradually decreased. If she hadn't sent people to call him back again and again, he probably wouldn't have thought of returning home to visit his mother for several years." The old monk sighed and said, "But the matter that this old monk has been worried about for more than 10 years still happened in the end. Madam, The most important thing right now is to find this person as soon as possible so that we can think of a way to resolve it. He has suffered enough. It's also my fault. When I was pregnant with him, I made him suffer so much and even almost caused him to die. I don't want him to experience any more tribulations or difficulties. Master, you must help me, you must help me. Cough, cough, cough. Madam, please rest assured. The old manor lord of Beijing Manor has always been this old monk's old friend. This old monk will definitely not disappoint his old friend. Ding Xian lightly bit her lip and nodded. Many thanks, master. This child should have lived like a prince for his entire life, but he was born with such a bitter fate. It's me who harmed him, it's me. If he had listened to my father back then, he wouldn't have come to this stage today. Now it's also as master's divination. If the love tribulation isn't removed, he will definitely suffer for all his lifetimes. Ding Xian softly murmured, Master, I don't want to be like this. I only wish for my child to be safe and happy. Is this too much? Madam, eldest miss sent a letter back. A middle-aged female servant in green clothes quickly walked to the pavilion and said. When Ding Xian heard the servant mention Xian her expression softened. Bring the letter in. This child, was the daughter-in-law candidate she had personally chosen because she was very clear that Yun did not like her. With such a daughter-in-law, Yun was safe. He would never be moved by Xian so naturally, he would not deal with that troublesome love tribulation. Speaking of which, the reason why her son couldn't fall in love with anyone was entirely because of her. It was her fault, but she couldn't make up for it now. She knew that she was selfish and sacrificed her for Yun. However, she had previously told her about this matter, letting her clearly know that Yun's life would be in danger after falling in love. Had to choose whether to marry or not. Xian personally agreed and didn't care much about that. That was why the marriage was finalized a few years ago. Beijing Manor always had its own special communication channel, so letters were exchanged very quickly. Ding Xian recalled that had left for 2 days and probably had something to report, so she hurriedly opened the letter to take a look. She jumped up and shouted with a stern expression, Men, summon 2 Beitan enforcers to head to the Mystic Beast Forest and kill that woman by young lord's side. Chapter 1144. 2 days later. Arbor opened her eyes, a hint of dissatisfaction in her heart. The barrier to the peak of level 13 was clearly within reach, but no matter how long she cultivated, she still couldn't break through it. If she was still sensible in the past, she would definitely understand that cultivating so impatiently was actually not a good thing. But now, in just a few short days, she had absorbed only 1/5 of the essence soil. This was really too fast. Cult Master Ding walked over with a pile of fruits. Seeing her open her eyes, his eyes couldn't help but light up. Little blockhead, you finished cultivating. Arbor blinked, her gaze following him back and forth. Seeing him holding a large pile of colorful little fruits, she couldn't help but stand up and trot to his side. While she was at it, she snatched a few fruits from his hands and subconsciously stuffed them into her mouth. Cult Master Ding stared blankly, then waved his hand in front of her eyes in surprise. Your eyes are better? Arbor ignored him. Cult Master Ding saw that she had eaten a few fruits, so he thought that the fruits he picked up tasted pretty good. So he also grabbed 2 fruits and threw them into his mouth, then, afterwards, he spat it out with a peh, peh, peh. His handsome face completely scrunched up, and he looked at Xiao Mu in disbelief. It's so sour, don't eat it. As he spoke, he quickly slapped away the fruits in her hands. How can this be eaten? This child was too careless. It was so sour, but she could still eat it so calmly. She was simply too amazing. Xiao Mu's jet-black eyes rolled slightly before she looked away. She turned around and pattered away, about to open up a path. Cult Master Ding hurriedly grabbed her sleeve and said with a stifled expression, How about this? I'll take you to the city to eat good food, okay? Xiao Mu flung away his hand that was grabbing her sleeve and crisply patted away the non-existent dust on her sleeve. Just as she was about to turn around and leave, her brows suddenly twitched, and an austere aura directly pounced at her, so fast that it was unimaginable. Arbor instinctively flipped to the side and dodged the fatal strike. He leaped lightly and landed beside Ding Yun. Ding Yun was shocked. His body quickly moved, and he was already in front of Arbor. He glared angrily at the two elders who suddenly came out of the forest. North Altar Protector, what are you two doing? Young Lord, sorry for the offense. One of the old men shouted angrily and flew forward to grab Ding Yun. The other person stepped forward, and a thick wave of profound energy was attached to it. He once again attacked Arbor. Arbor turned her body and was about to jump away when she saw a pair of blood-red scissors coming towards her. It was aimed at her wrist, and with a gotcha sound, the scissors cut. The profound artifact was very powerful. It cut off a piece of her sleeve from her wrist in a single move. If she hadn't retracted her hand quickly, that thing would have cut off her fair and tender wrist. Bang! Arbor gave a side kick, hitting the back of the old man's hand. Her body moved back a bit, and she nimbly stepped on the withered bushes. With a flash, she appeared behind the old man. A black ferrule suddenly appeared in her hand, and with a surge of profound energy, she abruptly struck the back of the old man's head. The old man quickly opened a defensive barrier and turned around to block with the large scissors. But with a clang, Arbor's wrist was actually shaken by that pair of scissors until it ached, and she took a step back. Elder Hang, stop. Ding Yun's gaze shrunk, and he suddenly wanted to sweep away the protector who was pestering him like a madman. Chapter 1145. Young Master, don't be so obstinate. Let Elder Hang kill this woman, and you come back with us. No. Ding Yun was very anxious. He was very clear about the cultivation levels of these two old ghosts. That was the suppressed cultivation of a level 4 spiritual master. Lil Wood was definitely not Elder Heng's match. I'll go with you. Let her go. Ding Yun shouted angrily. Let her go. Elder Heng, who was holding the large scissors, shook his head. I'm sorry, young master. This is Madam's order. Today, this old man must leave this woman's life here. After saying this, Elder Heng stepped up the attack in his hands. The large scissors flipped up and down, and with a fierce force, directly cut towards Arbor's small neck. Arbor turned around 4 or 5 times, frowning in displeasure. She coldly looked at the large scissors pointed at her throat. Clang! Her small jade-white hand came in contact with the large scissors, and there was a metallic spark. The old man was suddenly shocked, and his eyes widened in disbelief. How can this be? This woman could actually collide with his mystic weapon with her bare hands. While he was thinking, Arbor slapped away the scissors with her ferrule. She raised her hand, and 3 hexagonal snowflakes flew out. Bang, bang. They cut 2 trees beside the old man, and the upper half of the trees directly fell down. Seeing that it was about to fall on the old man, Elder Heng suddenly threw out a palm, and directly smashed the fallen tree into pieces. I really underestimated you. In a split second, wisps of spiritual energy fluctuated from the elder's body, and his level 4 spiritual cultivation surged inch by inch. He abruptly stretched out a withered black claw to grab Chiao Mu's shoulder. When the old man who was holding Ding Yun saw this, a trace of ruthlessness flashed across his brows. He suddenly jumped up, and threw a sword from Arbor's back, directly approaching. 2 enforcers. Cult Master Ding looked at the scene in front of him with fear. His body moved faster than his brain, and in an instant, he pounced towards Arbor. He suddenly grabbed Arbor's small body and turned her around to press her down. One of the protectors didn't have time to pull back his sword, and with a rip, a bloody wound appeared on Cult Master Ding's back. Elder Heng's gaze slightly shrank, almost immediately rushing forward to check his injuries. Young Master. The other person also hurriedly withdrew his sword and bent forward in fear. Young Master, how are you? Ding Yun lay there with his face down and did not move for a long time. The 2 enforcers were anxious to death. One of them reached out to help him turn around, while the other lowered his head and hurriedly called out, Young Master, Young Master. A cold light suddenly flashed through the depths of Ding Yun's eyes, which were covered by his hair. His hands suddenly burst out with spiritual light as he punched the waist of the two enforcers with his left and right fists. Crack! 2 crisp sounds of bones cracking could be heard. The eyes of the 2 old guardians were wide open as they were hit in the waist and abdomen by the fist wind. Their entire body flew back horizontally and fell heavily to the ground with a bang. They completely didn't expect that their young master would suddenly attack them. After Ding Yun's attack succeeded, he quickly stood up. He kicked with the tip of his foot and picked up the sword that one of the enforcers dropped. Without blinking, the sword's light exploded and suddenly slid past the necks of the 2 enforcers. 2 extremely thin lines of blood appeared on the necks of the 2 North Altar enforcers. Until they died, their dead fish eyes were wide open in anger, completely unable to understand why their young master would kill them. Chapter 1146. Disregarding the injury on his back, Ding Yun hastily walked to Aba's side and grabbed her hand. "Let's go." She probably didn't just send these 2 people. However, as soon as he moved, he couldn't help but lean heavily against a nearby tree. He only barely managed to steady himself by holding on to the tree. The little girl flung his hand away and expressionlessly glanced at him. Cult Master Ding could only turn to look at her with a wry smile. Suddenly, the little fellow pattered to his side and tapped 2 of his acupoints with her fingers. Then, she very instinctively took out a bottle of medicinal powder and poured a bit onto the wound on his back. Afterwards, with a smack, her little hand heavily pressed against the wound on his back. Who knew what kind of ointment she had stuck on his wound? The blood on his back immediately stopped flowing, and the wound caused by mystic energy didn't hurt as much as before. Cult Master Ding tugged at the corner of his mouth and forced a smile at the little girl. "I'm fine. We have to leave this place as soon as possible. Let's go." He understood his mother's methods too well. She probably wouldn't feel at ease even if he thought about it and would probably bring people here to personally execute Lil, Blockhead. Swish swish swish. Heavenly Law's invisible bindings swiftly wrapped around Cult Master Ding's limbs and firmly fixed him in place. A harsh glint flashed through Ding Yun's eyes. He abruptly flung his hand and grabbed Aba. He leaped into the air and swiftly broke free of Heavenly Law's bindings. However, his complexion paled even more, and his breathing was slightly hurried. How could Heavenly Law let off someone who recklessly used spiritual energy in the lower star domain like this? Invisible chains chased after Ding Yun at high speed. Ding Yun dodged while dragging Aba through the forest. In the blink of an eye, the 2 figures were already far away. Crown Prince Mo raised his head slightly in interest. He saw several crows that had shed their feathers cawing as they flew past the treetop before flapping their wings and flying away. "Your Highness, we found an underground base 5 kilometers to the southeast." Hui Feng's expression was a bit excited. "It looks quite large. Does Your Highness want to go take a look?" Mo Lien glanced into the distance again before nodding slightly and following Hui Feng toward the southeast. In an abandoned hut outside the Mystic Beast Forest. At this moment, the Raksha princess was kneeling in front of a man with a metal demon mask, trembling all over. She didn't even dare to raise her head. His nose was bruised and his face was swollen. There was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. It seemed like he had been severely beaten up just now. "Idiot! For your selfishness, you exposed our underground base and even caused us to suffer such a huge loss. You don't deserve to die." The middle-aged man was furious. He suddenly stomped on Princess Luosha's body. The Raksha princess fell to the ground and curled into a ball. She trembled as she cried out, "Hall Master, please spare me. Please spare me. Master's plan has been completely ruined by you, stupid woman." The man with the iron demon mask suddenly stepped forward, squatted down, put one hand on his knee, and grabbed Princess Raksha's hair with the other. "Take everyone and leave the base immediately." Princess Luosha's pupils constricted. "Master, you mean to give up on this base?" This was the second largest base in the organization. Were they going to give it up so easily? Slap. The middle-aged man slapped her. What else can we do? The Crown Prince's men are about to search this place. It's too late, Hallmaster. Their men have already arrived. Burn. Burn it all. A cold glint flashed through the middle-aged man's eyes. Chapter 1147. Huifeng gloomily directed the hidden guards to put out the fire. However, this underground fire burned abnormally fast, and several explosions could be heard in the distance. Emolien frowned and reached out to stop him. No need to search. Let's go. The opponent didn't seem to be simple. Of course, if not for this, they wouldn't have been able to secretly operate so many underground bases without being discovered. Your Highness, we can still search quickly. There's no need. Since they've already given up on this place, they won't leave any clues here, Emolien said indifferently. Let's go. The most important thing is to find the Crown Princess and bring her back. Emolien imperceptibly creased her brows. Could it be that the little fellow had missed him and returned to the Emo Kingdom capital by herself first? He couldn't calm himself down. He kept having the feeling that something bad had happened. Mai Lian section break. 2 days later, on the bustling streets of Guanlan City. Sir. I finally found you. A little girl with a rosy pink face and an extremely tender face panted as she caught up to an enchanting man in purple. She panted as she looked at him joyfully. Ding Yun looked at her with an unsightly expression. How did you find me? Beijing Manor's method of finding people was a bit special. Ding Yun was worried that Bao Yan, this girl, had exposed his whereabouts and lured his mother's group over. Bao Yan quickly waved her hand cleverly and said, I didn't inform Madam. Sir, I only saw you twice in the forest, but you ignored me when I called out to you. I chased after you the entire way before finally catching up. Cult Master Ding stopped, his figure swaying a couple of times in exhaustion. In order to break free of that D*MN heavenly law's restraints these 2 days, he had expended quite a bit of effort. This D*MN heavenly law was truly a dog trying to catch mice, meddling in other people's business. It was like gangrene attached to his bones the entire way, refusing to let go. It was so annoying that he was about to be annoyed to death. Fortunately, he had finally broken free for the time being. It seemed like he still had to be careful when using spiritual energy in the future. Sir. The little girl Bao Yan hastily went up to support his arm, looking over worriedly. You used your spiritual energy, didn't you? You promised old Madam that you wouldn't use your spiritual power casually in the outside world. I'm fine. Cult Master Ding indifferently brushed away the girl's arm and frowned slightly. All right, go back to the manor first. Why, young master, don't you want to go back with me? Ding Yun shook his head. I'm not going back for now. You can go. Remember not to tell anyone about my whereabouts. I'm not leaving. Bao Yan stomped her feet and shouted, I finally found young master. I'm not going anywhere. I'll just follow you. You. Young master, why don't you go back? Chapter 1148. When Cult Master Ding saw this, he hurriedly chased after her, reaching out to grab her small hand. Jojo, you're hungry, aren't you? How could Arbor know what it felt like to be hungry right now? She was completely acting out of instinct. Seeing Cult Master Ding run all the way to her side, Arbor suddenly raised her eyes to look at him. Although her face was expressionless, in Cult Master Ding's eyes, she looked adorably silly. He saw her reach out 2 jade-white fingers and forcefully tug at his sleeve. Why are you tugging at our young master's sleeve? Bao Yan impatiently pushed her hand away. Go, don't bother our young master anymore. Arbor's small face was expressionless as she swept a glance at her, then turned her small head to continue looking at Morning Cloud Restaurant. The little fellow's large eyes blinked twice, revealing an adorable yearning look. Cult Master Ding hurriedly asked, You're hungry, right? You want to eat, right? Answer me, and I'll bring you up. How could Arbor know what the hell he was talking about? This Cult Master Ding once again tragically didn't get any response. He couldn't help but sigh lowly and could only say, "All right, then let's go in." He didn't expect this little blockhead to have any reaction. In any case, she didn't seem to like him from beginning to end. "Young master." Baoyan grabbed his hand and rolled her eyes as she softly said, "Spare me, young master. Look at her, she's so silly and can't even speak. She's definitely a silly girl." When he thought of the first time they met, Auber's expressionless face, her eyes unable to see, her mouth unable to speak, her face expressionless when she was with people and things, like a moving jade statue, Cult Master Ding's heart couldn't help but tighten. "It's none of your business." Cult Master Ding raised his hand, but before he could grab the little girl's small hand, he saw her turn and walk into Morning Cloud Restaurant. "Baoyan, go back. Go back to the manor and tell my mother that I don't have time to go back in the short term." Cult Master Ding might also feel that his words were a bit too much, so he couldn't help but frown and say, "Tell her that I'll go back to visit her in a few days." "But young master, you promised old madam." Ding Yun did not wait for her to finish and ran into Morning Cloud Restaurant to chase after the young lady. Baoyan took a deep look at her young master and watched him hurriedly enter the restaurant. She stomped her feet and hurriedly followed him in. "Ah, young master, young miss, what do you want to eat? Our shop doesn't accept mystic coins. We only accept mystic grade and above herbs or forging materials." The waiter from the Morning Cloud Restaurant welcomed them with a smile. "I've really earned a lot today." The beautiful ice sculpture in front of him made his eyes light up. The waiter hurriedly wiped the table and stool and asked the little beauty to sit down. There was a middle-aged man who was eating noodles at the side. With half a noodle in his mouth, he stared at Auber in a daze. "What are you looking at?" Ding Yun glared at the man, causing the middle-aged man to shrink his neck and hurriedly retract his gaze. Auber was also amused. She also turned her head to look at the middle-aged man. In fact, she was looking at the bowl of noodles placed in front of him. Ding Yun tilted his head and looked at the little girl in front of him with a smile. He threw a piece of forging material to the waiter and said, "2 bowls of noodles." "Alrighty." The waiter happily went to prepare. Not a moment later, 2 steaming bowls of noodles were placed on the table. Ding Yun swept a glance at Baoyan standing to the side and frowned. "Why aren't you leaving?" Chapter 1149. "No, young master, this servant wants to go back with you," Baoyan said resolutely. Ding Yun ignored her. This servant girl had been picked up by his mother and brought back to the mountain villa when she was young. She had always stayed in his courtyard to serve him, and her temperament had always been very stubborn. Once she decided on something, it was rare for her to change her mind, so Ding Yun was disinclined to say anything more. Auber stared curiously at the bowl of noodles in front of her, and her small hand impatiently reached into the bowl. "Wait." Cult Master Ding jumped in fright and hastily grabbed her small hand. However, he felt that it was like a small ice cube in his hand, cool and without a trace of warmth. He hurriedly took a pair of chopsticks and placed it in her hand. "How can you use your hands? It's so hot." "Come, use the chopsticks." Auber stared at the 2 bamboo chopsticks in her hand with an expression that she had never seen before. She shook them, then grabbed a pair of chopsticks with each hand and reached into the bowl with difficulty to stir the noodles. After a long time, she didn't even manage to scoop up a single strand of noodles. If she found out later that she had once been so foolish, she probably wouldn't just hang up and beat up the giant ape for a day and be done with it. That was why it was said that one couldn't be too single-minded and absolute when doing anything. As a cultivation maniac, her mind was blank except for cultivation. She couldn't even take care of herself. This really wasn't good. Baoyan couldn't help but laugh out loud. Heavens, this fool doesn't even know how to use chopsticks. "Baoyan." Ding Yun's expression turned cold. Baoyan closed her mouth with a disgruntled expression, glaring at Auber with a bit of jealousy and resentment. There had never been anyone or anything that could attract young master's full attention like this. Young master had always been someone who played around and didn't care about anyone or anything, but now, he actually doted on a fool so much. "Come." Great Cult Master Ding simply put down his bowl and chopsticks. He picked up a clean pair of chopsticks, picked up a piece of noodles, and brought it to her lips. Eat. Darling Chow glanced at Cult Master Ding and moved her small head closer to open her mouth. With a crack, she bit off half of the chopsticks. Cult Master Ding. Baoyan burst out laughing. After a long struggle, he finally poured the entire bowl of noodles into her stomach. Arbor raised his hand to rub his belly, got up, and walked towards the door. Baoyan. She had eaten the noodles and drank the soup. Was she going to leave after eating her fill? This little fool is really a little hateful. Blockhead. Cult Master Ding hurriedly threw down his bowl of noodles, got up, and ran towards her. Arbor was walking out the door when he bumped into the second shopkeeper, who had just come back from collecting the bill. The second shopkeeper inadvertently raised his head and was immediately stunned. He cried out involuntarily, "Crown Princess?" The Crown Prince and Arbor had come to this restaurant before, and it was this second manager who had personally received them. Naturally, he recognized his mistress at a glance. At this moment, the second manager stared at Arbor with wide eyes and exclaimed in surprise, "Crown Princess!" It really was the Crown Princess. "Head shopkeeper, come quickly. Head shopkeeper, look at who I saw. It's the Crown Princess." During this period of time, the Crown Princess had disappeared from the Mystic Beast Forest. The Crown Prince had mustered a large force and brought his hidden guards to search for the Crown Princess' whereabouts, so all of the Crown Prince's subordinates knew about this. No wonder the second manager was so happy. If this news was immediately reported, His Highness the Crown Prince would probably go crazy with joy. What? The Crown Princess? The head shopkeeper had been busy upstairs and hadn't come down. Now that he heard the second manager's ghostly cry, he hastily ran downstairs. Chapter 1150. The head shopkeeper ran downstairs to look at Arbor and was overjoyed at the sight. "Aya, Crown Princess, it's really the Crown Princess. Thank the heavens, this is great. Second brother, quick, quick. Hurry up and report to His Highness." All right, we've finally found him." The head shopkeeper went forward, but before he could finish speaking, Ding Yun coldly blocked Arbor's path. "Who are you?" The head shopkeeper was stunned. "I am the head shopkeeper of Morning Cloud Restaurant." "Hello, sir. Did you save our Crown Princess?" Thank you so much. "Crown Princess?" Ding Yun snorted. "What the hell is this Crown Princess? We don't know you at all. Please move aside." The second shopkeeper and 2 or 3 waiters rushed up, all talking at once. "Sir, how can you say that? This is our Crown Princess." Crown Princess, I am Ah Fu. You and His Highness came here a few days ago, and I even brought you tea and water, remember?" Yes. "Crown Princess, stop fooling around. His Highness has been sending people to look for you day and night. If you're in a bad mood and want to go missing occasionally, that's fine. You can tell His Highness first, and then you can go missing." The head shopkeeper craned his neck and looked impatiently at Arbor, then gave the second shopkeeper a look. The second shopkeeper immediately understood and hurried out, presumably to find Dragon Saliva Guard Captain Yu Xiu to pass on the message. What kind of words were these? Ding Yun couldn't bring himself to smile. He saw this and felt slightly anxious. Damn it, so this Morning Cloud Restaurant was the Crown Prince's property. This was bad. Once the news reached the Crown Prince's ears, the little blockhead would be captured and brought back at any moment. That despicable Emolien, why wasn't he dead yet? Ding Yun's handsome face was cold as he separated the head shopkeeper with one hand and grabbed Arbor's small hand with the other. "Let's go." "Wait, you can't leave." The head shopkeeper blocked the two and looked at Ding Yun with an ugly expression. "You can leave, but the Crown Princess has to stay." "Little Wood, do you know them?" Ding Yun's expression remained unchanged as he turned to ask Arbor. He knew that Arbor would not respond to anyone, including him. Sure enough, a certain little person's face was expressionless, and there was no reaction even after a while. Crown Princess. The head shopkeeper was anxious. He scratched his head and ears and said, "I'm old Sue. Please take a closer look. Haven't we met before? Hey, what's going on? There's no need to look anymore. All of you, get out of the way. Don't come here to claim kinship." Ding Yun sneered. He grabbed Xiao Qiao's little hand and turned to walk out of the door. "Wait, stop right there." With a cold face, the manager extended his hand to block Ding Yun's path again. Ding Yun flicked his sleeves angrily, and the manager took 3 steps back with a dong 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 sound. His face was gloomy and uncertain. So powerful. This young man's cultivation was actually so profound that he could push back a level 10 great mystic cultivator manager by 3 steps with a light flick of his sleeve. Inside Morning Cloud Restaurant, everyone was dead silent. The manager's expression was also very unsightly. He cupped his hands at Ding Yun and said, "Today, this Sue's skills are inferior and I concede defeat. Sir, please leave your esteemed name." "Beijing Manor." Ding Yun snorted. "Ding Yun. So it's Beijing Manor's young Master Ding." The manager's eyes flashed, and he cupped his fists and bowed. "No matter what, young Master Ding, please understand one thing." Chapter 1151. The head manager pointed at Arbor. "This is the Eastern Palace's crown princess. Keeping her here will be of great benefit to you and your family." Ding Yun sneered. "You want to keep me here with just the likes of you?" "Excuse me." With a wave of the head shopkeeper's hand, all of the waiters in Morning Cloud Restaurant rushed up with sharp gazes and surrounded Ding Yun, Xiao Mu, and Bao Yan. Bao Yan pointed at Xiao Mu in astonishment and asked, "Young master, is this really the crown prince consort?" "No, she doesn't know them at all." Ding Yun said indifferently. "This is a shady restaurant. Bao Yan, bring little blockhead back to the manor first. I'll deal with this." "Ah, how can this be? What if Madam finds out about this? Who would step foot into my courtyard normally? Hurry and take her away." Ding Yun glared at Bao Yan. "Are you not going to listen to me anymore?" "Yes, young master." Bao Yan lowered her eyes, aggrieved. "Simply a lunatic's ravings," the head manager said furiously. "All of you, attack. You must keep him here. Be careful not to hurt the crown princess." Just as the head manager finished speaking, he suddenly saw a plain-colored figure move. He kicked a small square table, directly flattening it. Darling Qiao turned her small face and rolled up her sleeves. Her figure moved and scratched the face of the waiter closest to her. "Head manager, Her Excellency Crown Princess, what are you doing? Can't you distinguish between friend and foe first?" Ding Yun grabbed her small hand and shoved her toward Bao Yan. "Let's go." Bao Yan pulled Arbor and suddenly struck out with 2 palms, dashing out of the door. Just as the head manager and the others were about to give chase, they saw Ding Yun suddenly float in the air and spread open his arms to release 2 powerful waves of mystic qi. Everyone screamed, "Ah!" and fell out like rubber balls. The tables and chairs in front of him were all smashed into wooden splinters and scattered to the ground. Ding Yun did not linger in the battle after his attack succeeded. He quickly flipped out of the window and chased after the 2 figures in front of him. "Quick! Quick, stop them!" The shopkeeper spat out a mouthful of blood as he crawled up from the ground and yelled, "Quick, quick, quick! Stop them!" Ding Yun jumped out of the window and saw the group of people from Morning Cloud Restaurant chasing after him, unwilling to give up. He turned his head and waved his hand. Several wooden windows and doors nearby were all shattered, startling the pedestrians who were walking on the street. They screamed and covered their heads as they dodged. Ding Yun smiled and flew to Arbor's side in a few steps. He took a breath and flew forward with Arbor. The fleeing people raised their heads one after another and stared blankly at the 2 goddess-like beauties. The head shopkeeper and the others chased after them in a sorry state, but Arbor was nowhere to be seen. They were so angry that they stomped their feet and sighed. "Uncle Sue, what should we do now?" Fu asked. "Is the second manager back yet? Go and report again." Also, hurry and inform the Dragon Saliva guards to close the city gates and lock down the entire city. Search. The people from Morning Cloud Restaurant rushed out one after another. Some reported, and some were busy searching. All of them were as anxious as ants on a hot pan. The head shopkeeper looked like he had nothing left to live for. Originally, finding the Crown Princess was an especially good thing, but now, if His Highness the Crown Prince were to find out that the person had escaped from their restaurant, he would definitely torture all of them to death. Chapter 1152. At this moment, a strange scene appeared on the streets of the capital. From the nobles and noble ladies to the commoners, peddlers and servants, they all stared blankly at the two beauties, one in front and one behind, as if they were taking a leisurely stroll in the courtyard. Abba didn't notice their gazes at all. Even if she did, there wouldn't be any ripples in her heart. Cultivate, cultivate, cultivate. Previously, because her vision had recovered, Abba's attention had been diverted by a lot of fresh food. Now that she had finished eating and exited Morning Cloud Restaurant, the speed cultivation talisman once again shouted in her heart. Now, she should find an especially quiet environment to continue cultivating. Abba raised her head and looked around, frowning a few times. The mystic energy here was very thin, and she somewhat disliked it. Lil Blockhead, let's return to the manor, okay? Ding Yun followed behind her and asked cautiously. Abba naturally wouldn't give him any response. Now that she had recovered her vision, everything else had not recovered. She couldn't hear, and she couldn't speak, so how was she supposed to answer? Ding Yun smiled and said, "If you don't object, I'll take it that you agree. In the future, you'll go wherever I go, and we'll never be separated, okay?" Abba replied with the back of her head. Baoyan, who was at the side, glanced at Abba with a sour taste in her heart, then said to Ding Yun, "Young master, I think we should leave the city as soon as possible. That shopkeeper from earlier probably went to report, and any later, I'm afraid we won't be able to leave the city gates." Ding Yun grunted in agreement. Just as he finished speaking, they heard a hoarse voice shout from the other end of the street, "Surround this entire street, no one is allowed to leave." "Sir, what's going on? This old man has set up a small stall here, and I've been honest and dutiful. I haven't done a single bad thing." That's right, sir, we're all good citizens." Seeing the soldiers coming over in an aggressive manner, a few of the peddlers were shocked and quickly greeted the leading officer with an obsequious smile. "The Imperial Court is searching for the criminal who kidnapped the Crown Princess. It's just a routine matter, and it's none of your business. Move aside. Go home if you need to." Everyone obediently retreated to the side of the street. "Search carefully. Don't let anyone go," the leader of the officers shouted angrily. Ding Yun cast a glance at the other end of the long street, only to see several hundred soldiers under the lead of a dark-faced man, interrogating the pedestrians one by one. Ding Yun frowned and grabbed Abba's little hand. "Little blockhead, let's go." Bao Yen clenched her fists, knowing that the situation was not good. Could it be that his young master was so daring as to kidnap someone else's crown princess? As the three of them moved quickly, the dark-faced man glanced at their departing figures and hurriedly shouted, "Stop right there!" Ding Yun pulled Abba and ran faster and faster. The dark-faced man quickly caught up and angrily shouted, "Stop!" Ding Yun turned his head and glared at him. "Who are you calling to stop?" "I'm calling you." The black-faced man was none other than the deputy commander of the Imperial Army, He Tian. At the same time, Hui Feng leaped in from the study's window. Holding the information in his hand, he excitedly reported, "Your Highness, our men have found the Crown Princess." "Where?" Mo Lien abruptly stood up. Mo Lien wasn't the only one inside the small study. Duan Yu and Situ Yi, who were sitting across from each other, were also surprised. "Where is little junior sister?" "She's at Morning Cloud Restaurant on Hualing Street." As soon as he finished speaking, His Highness the Crown Prince's figure swiftly brushed past him and flew out. Chapter 1153. When Tian received the news, he happened to be nearby with a group of soldiers, so he was naturally one step ahead of Dragon Saliva Guard Captain Yu Xiu. After Morning Cloud Restaurant sent out the news, there was no need for the Crown Prince to give the order. Once they received news that the Crown Princess was in the capital, be it the Hidden Night Pavilion, Dragon Saliva Guard, or Imperial Guard, they immediately split up and began to search the city. If the Crown Prince Consort was still able to escape from under their noses like this, then who knew what His Highness the Crown Prince would do to these pitiful people? Tian happened to be nearby with a group of soldiers, so he immediately rushed over to Morning Cloud Restaurant after receiving the secret report. They began their search from the restaurant, and indeed, they soon saw Ding Yun pulling the Crown Princess and planning to leave quietly. He immediately stopped them. "What right do you have to tell me to stop?" Ding Yun sneered. Tian was furious. "Good lad, it's you, isn't it? The Ding Yun who injured innkeeper Su. I advise you not to act recklessly. Quickly release our Crown Prince Consort and allow yourself to be captured." As he spoke, a group of soldiers had already rushed over and surrounded Ding Yun and Arbor. The crowd dispersed in all directions, afraid that they would accidentally injure themselves in a fight. "Just with your motley crew? You want to keep me, Ding Yun, here?" He sneered. "What arrogance! All of you, get out of the way. I'll deal with this little brat." Tian pulled out the steel sword at his waist and waved it, sending a gust of wind toward Ding Yun. Ding Yun guffawed, and his eyes narrowed as he coldly uttered, "Just in time." He lightly pushed Xiao Mu aside before grabbing a soldier beside him to swiftly block the attack. That soldier felt the wind from the sword was biting cold. If Tian hadn't withdrawn his aura, half of his head would have been cut off. Even so, the soldier broke out in a cold sweat. He raised his hand to touch his head and found that a large chunk of his hair had been shaved off, leaving his forehead completely bald. Ding Yun laughed heartily as he snatched the spear from the soldier's hand and tossed him aside. The soldier was thrown onto the table at the side and rolled onto the ground. He cried out in pain and was helped up by his companions. Tian saw that he was so crafty and strange, toying with his soldiers the moment he made a move, and his expression could not help but become furious. In the blink of an eye, Tian's second and third strikes carried the unique strength of a level 11 body cultivator and arrived in front of Ding Yun. Ding Yun raised his spear to block the attack, his eyes filled with ridicule as he praised, "Good saber technique." Tian's saber focused on speed. Seeing Ding Yun easily block two of his moves while talking, he couldn't help but secretly admire this young man's cultivation. He was a rough man. If he could win, then he could win. If he couldn't, then he couldn't. There was nothing to be unconvinced about. Right now, his skills were inferior, but he could not retreat even half a step. The most important thing right now was to rescue the Crown Princess. No matter how bad it was, he had to keep them here and wait for the Crown Prince to arrive. He didn't know what was wrong with the Crown Princess. Her gaze was cold as she looked in their direction, as if she didn't even recognize him. She didn't know if this brat had done something to her to make her look like an idiot. In the blink of an eye, Tian had already exchanged over 100 moves with Ding Yun and was forced to retreat. Tian couldn't help but feel frustrated. He didn't expect this Ding brat to have such a profound cultivation despite his young age. If this continued, he was afraid that he would lose to him due to lack of strength. Chapter 1154. Ding Yun's lips curled into a sneer as he mercilessly grabbed at his shoulder. This claw seemed to have the intention of breaking Tian's shoulder blade. He didn't feel like teasing these small fries anymore. In reality, many thoughts had also flashed through Ding Yun's mind. At this moment, he was a bit regretful. He regretted wandering around the Mo Kingdom capital. If he had brought this darling back to the headquarters earlier, it wouldn't have attracted so much trouble. He had been too confident. Although these small fries weren't his match, he was afraid that if they fought for a long time, they would attract even more enemies. At that time, it would be hard to guarantee victory. His lil blockhead didn't recognize anyone right now. That was perfect. In his heart, he really didn't want her to recover her memory. Once she returned to normal, he wouldn't be treated well by her. Perhaps she would attack him mercilessly like that night by the river. When he thought of this, his heart felt like it was being wrenched by something, making him extremely uncomfortable. A long howl came from the other end of the street. He-Tion suddenly jumped up and followed up with a howl. Ding Yun's heart trembled, knowing that the dark-faced man's companions had rushed over. In a hurry, a trace of mystic energy floated up from his hands, suppressing the spears in the soldiers' hands. In the blink of an eye, he had them all turn around and point their spears at He-Tion. Those soldiers cried out, "Io!" their hands stabbing their spears at He-Tion uncontrollably. He-Tion was greatly alarmed. His steel saber chopped off the spearheads with a few swishes, and he shouted, "Steady yourselves! Retreat, retreat!" Ding Yun took advantage of the chaos to grab Arbor's small hand, pulling her along as he ran towards the city gates. With a flick of his sleeve, several passers-by were all pushed to the ground by the mystic energy he released. The rolling passers-by sprawled on the ground, crying out in alarm. He-Tion led everyone in pursuit and nearly stepped on those passers-by, so he hastily avoided them. Arbor still didn't know what happened, so she expressionlessly turned to glance at He-Tion and the others. "Crown Princess!" He-Tion angrily cursed, "Mother asterisk cur," and chased over with flying steps while holding his steel saber. He rebuked, "Stinking brat, you better hurry and stop. What kind of sorcery did you use on our crown princess? She can't even recognize me." Ding Yun ignored him and pulled Arbor along as he ran. However, he had only taken a few steps when he heard the sound of clothes fluttering behind him. 3 figures just happened to land around them, blocking Ding Yun's path in a triangular formation. He-Tion shouted, "Your Highness!" and rushed over with his blade. Ding Yun focused his gaze and saw that it was Prince Mo, Duan Yu, and Situ Yi. When Ding Yun saw Crown Prince Mo, he was visibly startled. Why did he look so safe and sound? Wasn't he poisoned by devil grass, an extremely potent neurotoxin? In a short period of time, the nerves would be paralyzed, which would then affect the limbs and body. He would gradually become a paralyzed person. But now, this man was actually unharmed? Ding Yun's pupils constricted slightly as a trace of discomfort slid through his heart. Why was the devil grass ineffective on this man? Prince Mo narrowed his phoenix eyes and coldly said, "Return the baby to me and you can scram." Ding Yun reflexively grasped Arbor's small hand and pretended to be a complete stranger. He glared at them and shouted, "Who are you people? Why are you obstructing our path time and time again? Withdraw." A trace of fury flashed through Prince Mo's eyes. He glanced at the unresponsive Arbor with unconcealable jealousy and hatred in his heart. Chapter 1155. With a swish, her sword pierced towards Ding Yun's heart at an extremely fast speed. This stab was ruthless and accurate, and it came so quickly. However, Ding Yun gathered his energy and flipped in midair, grabbing Arbor as he retreated 3 steps. Duan Yu exclaimed with a smile before nodding and praising, "Your martial arts aren't bad. Unfortunately, you're about to become a dead man." Ding Yun snorted. "You're talking about yourself, right? You still dare to hold on to me and not let go?" Mo Lien was enraged, and Raven Moon abruptly appeared in her palm. A vicious aura streaked across the air, aiming for Ding Yun's eyes. "Your Highness, please wait." Situ Yi quickly flew in front of him and blocked his sword. He acted like a peacemaker as he said, "It won't be too late to make a move after we've made things clear. Little junior sister, why are you so naughty? Why didn't you inform us when you returned to the royal capital? Do you know that in order to find you, His Highness the Crown Prince has spent a lot of effort?" "Xiaoshe." Situ Yi paused in the middle of his words because he realized that his junior sister's eyes had not even glanced in his direction. This little fellow was looking around for who knew what. She really was blind to not look in their direction when the 3 peerlessly handsome men were standing in front of her. She could still absent-mindedly look around like this? "Look my asterisks. Jojo, Jojo." Duan Yu also noticed that Aber's expression was a bit off, so he couldn't resist calling out to her. Aber's small face was stoic as she searched her surroundings, causing them to also turn their heads to see what she was looking at. When Aber's gaze landed on the three of them, an extremely icy and detached face happened to be facing them. Her gaze didn't move at all, and her expression didn't change at all. It was as if she was looking at three strangers. Emolien's heart contracted. Her heart was about to shatter when she saw this terrifying and icy gaze. Duan Yu's eyes also widened in shock. Jojo, what's wrong? Why don't you recognize us? We didn't recognize each other in the first place. Why pretend like you know each other? Ding Yun said with a cold laugh. There's nothing to say. It was him. After capturing our Chow Chow, I don't know what they fed her, but now she looks like an idiot. Even now, he still dares to refuse to let go. Let me kill him first. Duan Yu's beautiful peach blossom eyes were tainted with a layer of fury, and he tilted his body to throw a yearning nail at Ding Yun's throat. Brother Duan Yu, calm down. Although Situ Yi was also anxious, he was the calmest among them and wouldn't let the matter before him get to his head. Hence, he hastily pressed down on Duan Yu and turned to say to Ding Yun, "This humble one is Heavenly Dao Sex Situ Yi. Brother must be Beijing Manor's young master, Ding Yun." That's right. Ding Yun stared at him. Who are you? Why are you blocking our path again and again? Bao Yan nervously clenched her fists as she stood on the side. When Prince Mo and the others appeared, her heart started pounding madly like a drum. She was on tenterhooks for her young master's safety. She could tell that the young master's strength was slightly inferior to His Highness the Crown Prince's. If the three people before her joined forces, the young master absolutely wouldn't be able to escape alive. It was all this fool's fault. It was all her fault for causing this disaster. Bao Yan resentfully looked at Aber, who was standing next to the young master. Aber was expressionless and even somewhat absent-minded. Chapter 1156. Her gaze kept wandering around, searching for a place with enough mystic energy for her to cultivate. He noticed that her gaze never rested on him for even a moment from beginning to end. Prince Mo was truly anxious, infuriated, and in unbearable heartache. What was going on? What exactly happened inside the mystic beast forest secret realm? Why did his darling act like she didn't know him at all? Emolian only felt a heart-wrenching fury gushing out. That fury instantly scuttled up from the depths of her heart, and she urgently needed to find an outlet to vent. Stop pretending. Don't you know the reason why we stopped you? Tell us, what exactly do you want for Jojo to be released? Emolian demanded while glaring at Ding Yun. Jojo. Ding Yun pretended to look down at the little lady whose gaze was wandering everywhere. You're talking about her? Nonsense. Duan Yu harumphed. You punk. Quickly return Jojo if you know what's good for you. Otherwise, don't blame us for attacking you. She's not the Jojo you're talking about. Ding Yun looked like he was lying through his teeth, but his expression was extremely serious. Look, she doesn't know you guys at all. She says she's called Lil Blockhead, and she's my... Why are you still arguing with him? Why don't you kill him and snatch Jojo back? Duan Yu jumped up and shouted, Why aren't you attacking? Fight. Dragon Saliva Guard Captain Yu Xiao, who had rushed over upon hearing the news, led a group of Dragon Saliva Guard disciples over. Before he could speak, the four people were about to fight. Situi glanced at them in astonishment and asked hesitantly, Are we attacking together? Duh. This isn't too good, right? Situi hesitated. What's not good about it? Now isn't the time to talk about righteousness in the pugilistic world. Attack together and kill this guy. Then all the problems will be solved. Duan Yu made the final decision. For the first time, Prince Mo felt that Duan Yu was quite quick-witted. He was right. Everything would be settled after killing him. Duan Yu and Prince Mo flew forward one after another, and Raven Moon and Raven Bone Fan simultaneously swung at Ding Yun. What a lousy idea. Situ-yi sighed inwardly. In fact, he wanted to ask young Master Ding what was going on with his junior sister. Perhaps this young Master Ding had accidentally picked up his junior sister and brought her with him all the way. What if this young Master Ding was junior sister's benefactor? It was a little unreasonable for him to suddenly attack young Master Ding. The strangest thing was that little junior sister didn't even have the slightest reaction when she saw them. In the past, whenever she saw him, even if her face was stoic, she would still cutely call him senior brother Situ. Prince Mo and Duan Yu attacked Ding Yun without another word. After a moment of hesitation, Situ-yi also pounced forward, unsheathing the long sword at his waist. 3 bursts of vigorous dark force simultaneously crashed into young Master Ding's chest, back, and long legs. Ding Yun's heart couldn't help but tremble. He had previously used the identity of Thief Sage Ding Ting Ding to fight with Prince Mo, and he knew that he was no match for him. If he hadn't schemed against him at that time, he probably wouldn't have been able to escape. Now that Duan Yu and Situ-yi were added to the mix, it became increasingly difficult. He felt like every strike from the trio wanted his life. After blocking Duan Yu's palm strike with great difficulty, Emolien and Situ-yi's sword stabbed toward his chest as fast as lightning. Amidst the chaos, Ding Yun's gaze focused, and he turned to smile at Duan Yu. Chapter 1157. Laugh my *s. Duan Yu was about to scold him when the other party opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of poisonous mist. After Duan Yu dodged to the side, he almost bumped into the sword that Situ-yi handed over. This made Situ-yi so angry that he jumped in fright and quickly shouted, "Brother Duan Yu, what the hell are you doing? There's something wrong with this punk." Duan Yu quickly shouted, "He's a superhuman." Emolien looked at Ding Yun pensively. She didn't say anything and just brandished her long sword, forcing Ding Yun to retreat in a fluster. Yu Xiu suddenly called out, "Crown Prince Consort." Arba's gaze didn't land on those people. In reality, she had already sensed the location with the densest mystic energy in the entire royal capital. Compared to the mystic energy inside the Mystic Beast Forest Mystic Realm, the mystic energy here was clearly much thinner. But it was better than nothing, right? Arba locked onto her target and flew up to the roof in a flash, directly leaving the group of men staring at each other on the street behind. She ran off first by herself. Little junior sister. Situ-yi couldn't resist shouting when he returned to his senses. *CK. They were fighting enthusiastically over there, but little junior sister didn't care at all and abandoned them to run off first. How could Arba hear that? After a few leaps, the little one disappeared from everyone's sight. Duan Yu was a bit dumbfounded, but his movements weren't slow as he reflexively blocked Ding Yun's path. During this one breath's time, Emolien abandoned everyone and quickly chased after Arba's fleeing figure. Darling Chao's disappearance only took a few seconds, so Emolien was also fast enough to catch up. Not long after, she saw that nimble little fellow running towards the mountain behind Honghai Temple on all fours. Behind Fu Mountain was Zhuzi Lake. Why was the little fellow running there? Our dear Arba's mind was restless at this moment. Cultivate, cultivate, cultivate. It felt pretty good as expected. The closer she got to Fu Mountain, the denser the mystic energy felt. Compared to the thin mystic energy in the entire capital, the mystic energy in the mountain behind Fu Mountain was much denser. When Arba reached the mountain behind Fu Mountain, a jade-green lake appeared before her eyes. The jade-green water was as serene as a mirror. To the lake rippled as sunlight seeped into it. Xiao Mu jumped onto a large rock by the lakeside and casually combed her long hair that had been messed up by the wind with a slight movement of her fingers. The water ripples lightly, the water, ripples a fish's tail after tail. To the side to the water to the back of the lake. The lake water reflected a small face that was as white as jade. Her unperturbed gaze landed on the lake's surface as she concentrated on the water. Her brows furrowed with a hint of coldness, as if she could freeze the lake's jade-green ripples. Arba pursed her beady lips and slowly raised her fair and tender breasts. She gently stroked the ripples on the lake's surface before suddenly leaping into the water with a splash. She emerged from the water with a slender fish and spat out a mouthful of bubbles. A defensive barrier naturally covered her body, and she closed her eyes to rapidly absorb the dense mystic energy around the lake. The little fellow was only following her instincts and intuition when doing these actions, so her face was as expressionless as a wooden sculpture. As if she was going to carry out a sacred mission, her small face was stoic, and her entire body emitted a steady and calm aura. Chapter 1158. Auber merely followed her instincts and skillfully entered a cultivation state. Emolien's chilly aura enveloped this lake. When he saw the little fellow's current state, he didn't know whether to laugh or be angry. How come he never knew that the first thing this mischievous little thing did after returning to the Mo Kingdom capital was to run to Zhuzi Lake behind Fu Mountain to cultivate? Cultivate, cultivate, cultivate. Xiao Mu did not know that Crown Prince Mo was staring fixedly at her beside her, gazing at her in a daze. She immersed herself in cultivation for 2 days and 3 nights without any activity. Emolien kept watch over her the entire time, watching over this vexing little thing. On the other side, after Ding Yun lost Auber, he was chased out of the city gate by Duan Yu, Yu Xiu, and the others. Situ Yi originally wanted to stop them after following them out of the city gate, but Yu Xiu and the others simply didn't give Ding Yun a chance to speak. After exiting the Mo Kingdom capital, the group chased Cult Master Ding all the way to Gale Forest and completely surrounded him. The atmosphere froze for a moment. Baoyan quickly exclaimed, "Young master, leave first." "Why should I leave?" Ding Yun sneered. His slender figure suddenly streaked across the sky as he sent a wave of mystic energy at Duan Yu and the others. Duan Yu met him with narrowed eyes, and the two exchanged over 100 blows. As they fought, the sound of wind mixed with the clanging of swords rang out incessantly. "Brother Duan Yu, young Master Ding, can the two of you slow down and listen to what I have to say first?" Situ Yi twitched his mouth and hastily called out. In the open space in front of the forest, dense mystic energy transformed into balls of white light that exploded. Duan Yu and Ding Yun abruptly separated from each other upon contact. The Dragon Saliva Guard soldiers at the front of the formation couldn't dodge in time and were all injured by the mystic energy, tumbling backwards with a plop. Yu Xiu's face darkened, and he was about to charge forward with his sword when Duan Yu reached out to stop him. Baoyan gritted her teeth and steeled her heart. Suddenly, she leaped onto a tree. After closing her eyes, a few drops of sweat slowly seeped out of her small face. When she opened her eyes again, Baoyan put her little hand to her lips and cried out a few times. Suddenly, furry faces slowly emerged from behind the trees in the forest. Swaying their long tails, a dozen or so vicious wolves bared their sharp teeth at Duan Yu's group. Duan Yu raised a brow. Interesting. The little maid beside Ding Yun was actually a person with special abilities. Bao Yan used her telekinesis to summon the wolves nearby. With the range of her special ability, she could only summon more than 10 wolves. Even so, it was still quite impressive. It must be known that the pack of wolves that Bao Yan had summoned were not ordinary wolves. Most of them were Xian beasts of the 5th level and above. It was slightly troublesome to deal with them. After exhausting her psychokinesis, Baoyan barely propped up her limp body and slid down. With her back against the tree, she stared unblinkingly at Duan Yu's group. He let out a soft reprimand. The large wolf in the lead suddenly pounced ferociously in Duan Yu's direction. Duan Yu sneered and instinctively shook the raven bone fan in his hand. He dodged the vicious wolf's pounce with a crouch and turned around to leap onto the wolf's back at lightning speed. With a flash of silver light, Duan Yu gently closed the raven bone fan in his hand. With a forceful fling of his raised wrist, the raven bone fan abruptly transformed into a long sword. The sharp blade reversed and directly stabbed into the large wolf's head. Duan Yu's lips curled into a sneer. Chapter 1159. That dumb wolf only had time to whimper twice before collapsing heavily on the ground, dead. Immediately afterward, 2 more vicious wolves pounced forward, but their necks were slit by the long sword. The pack of wolves whimpered and didn't dare to act rashly. Bao Yan bit her lips and shouted angrily, "Hurry and go!" Duan Yu put away his long sword and silently stood under the tree, his lips curling into a sardonic smile. Suddenly, he flung his sleeve, and a round, sparkling emerald pearl suddenly leaped into the air. Duan Yu took out a small object that resembled an emerald-green bamboo tube from his waist. He opened the back cover and instantly sucked the emerald pearl inside. He abruptly twisted the lid and lightly pressed it, causing a green light to explode instantly. A ray of light shot out and landed at the feet of the pack of wolves. With a loud boom, large patches of flames immediately erupted. Duan Yu looked at the flames that kept rippling in front of him. When he saw that the vicious wolves were all engulfed by the flames, he blinked and murmured with a chuckle, "Jade Heavenly Thunder, not bad at all." This new type of firearms power could surpass the core ravaging thunder, and its range was also much further. Ding Yun flipped twice in the air while dragging Bao Yan along. His sleeves were stained by the green flames, and a series of small holes were burned into them. Cult Master Ding was fine, but Bao Yan was a bit miserable. She was already a bit weak after using her special power, and now that she was burned by the soaring flames, her arms and legs were in pain from the burns. Her body went limp, and she fell to the ground. "Let's go." Ding Yun grabbed Bao Yan and gave her a push before escaping into the forest with her with an unsightly expression. Yu Xiu was about to give chase with his men when Duan Yu stopped him. "Don't chase." Situ Yi sighed in relief and said, "I feel that this matter is quite strange. I wonder how little junior sister is doing." A hint of worry flashed through Duan Yu's eyes. "Let's go back and take a look." My Chow's division, after 2 days and 3 nights, Arbor opened her eyes. Her cultivation had already advanced from phenomenal success to the pinnacle of level 13 mystic cultivation. In addition, not only did her strength increase by a minor realm, her eyes moved slightly, as if her sense of hearing and taste had also recovered. Arbor raised her eyebrows. She didn't know why, but she felt a little excited. It seemed that something important was about to come back. The little fellow squatted inside the defensive shield and swayed a few times with the flow of water. Suddenly, she saw a moon-white figure swimming quickly towards her. Immediately after, a faint medicinal fragrance wrapped around her. Her lips were gently opened by the tip of someone's tongue, and an endless medicinal fragrance followed. Arbor's eyes were wide open. He didn't understand what was going on. The surrounding scenery was very detailed. Even the schools of fish that were swimming around could be seen clearly, and the colorful spots on their bodies could be seen clearly. But now was not the time to study fish. Under normal circumstances, Arbor should have pushed the person in front of him away and kicked him hard with his little foot. But for some reason, he couldn't bear to do it. His fist had already reached the back of that person's head, but he still stopped. Cough, 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 cough. The little fellow actually couldn't hold her breath and nearly choked on her own saliva. She couldn't resist stretching out her little paws to push him away, but she suddenly realized that his slender fingers were tightly gripping her waist. Her entire body was wrapped in his embrace, and her small hands and feet were suppressed. She was practically unable to move. Chapter 1160. He wrapped his arms around her waist and pressed his soft lips against hers. This kiss was so long that it seemed like it would last until the end of time. He held on to her and never let go, searching her mouth to his heart's content. Arbor opened her eyes wide and glared at him. No matter how much Emolien closed his eyes and pressed down on her to kiss her, after a long while, he finally couldn't help but bring her to the surface of the water. Because this little fellow kept glaring at him. Although she didn't make a sound, that strange little expression on her face made him feel stifled. She actually wasn't intoxicated at all. To think that he had already sunk into it. How infuriating. A certain baby who had lost her 7 emotions and 6 desires only knew that this strange big brother kept nibbling on her. There weren't any ripples in her heart. Splash! With a soft sound, Arbor was lifted out of the water with both hands. She kicked her leg and reached out to press down on the rock on her right, flipping over and sitting on it. This time, she saw it clearly. On the sparkling green water surface, there was a man in white with long hair and a few droplets of water on his handsome face. His black, satin-like hair was soaked in the lake water, sticking to his straight back. His phoenix eyes were filled with a faint light as he stared straight at her, as if he wanted to see through her to the depths of her heart. Just like that, he stared at her in a daze. After a long while, he finally let out a long sigh. Unexpectedly, Qiao Mu also followed suit and sighed. She blinked her eyes and coughed lightly. Then, she raised her hand to touch her throat and realized that she could actually speak. "Jojo, are you pretending that you don't know me?" The water rippled gently, and this beauty swayed to the side of the big rock, half lying there and looking at her. Darling Qiao blinked and suddenly said, "Who are you?" Emolien tightly pursed his thin lips. Suddenly, he reached out and pulled her into the water again. He was overwhelmed by rage and grief, and he cupped her small face in his hands. Without another word, he bit down on her small mouth and nibbled on it rudely. "Who am I? Who do you think I am? Tell me." Boom. Auber tried to restrain himself again and again, but in the end, he couldn't take it anymore. He stretched out a small fist and punched the back of Emolien's head. "What are you doing?" Qiao Mu shouted as she forcefully pushed away his drenched body and wiped her small mouth in passing. Emolien, why did he feel that the little thing in front of him was inexplicably cute? "I'm your husband." His heart skipped a beat, and he reached out to hug her. However, she raised her small hand and slapped his hand away rudely. It was already the 12th day since the disaster-courting talisman had taken effect. Auber's 5 senses and consciousness were slowly recovering. However, the only goal in his heart would never change. Cultivate, cultivate, cultivate. Where are we going? Seeing that the little fellow was about to jump into the water again, Emolien quickly pulled her into his embrace and forcefully held her hands down. A trace of anger flashed across his almond-shaped eyes. "Don't move." With this soft and moist body in his arms, how much willpower did he have to use to restrain himself? This little fellow actually dared to move around to provoke him. Wasn't she worried that he would do her on the spot? Auber slightly tilted her little head and met his pair of beautiful black eyes. Her little eyes flickered. Suddenly, a loud drumming sound came from his abdomen. Emolien lowered his head and reached out to touch her shriveled little stomach. A trace of heartache flashed across his eyes. Chapter 1161. He didn't know what had happened to this little thing recently. Did she not take good care of herself these past few days? He kept feeling that she had lost quite a bit of weight. That originally round place seemed to have also become thinner. His heart felt so bad. He had taken great pains to raise her until she was a little rounder, but after a few days, she had returned to her original state. Sigh. Qiao Mu also sighed along with him, looking very comical. Emolien's phoenix eyes revealed traces of a smile. "I am your husband." He moved closer to her ear and whispered in a low voice, "I am your husband, baby." He repeated it several times, his breath lingering in her ear. Although she had not recovered her sense of touch and could not feel him close to her, she still felt that it was very strange. This man was really quite good-looking. His head of waterfall-like black hair that hung down to the lake's surface was gently parted by the wind. At this time, he was holding the little fellow and sitting with her on that large rock. He lowered his head and stared at her with those pure black phoenix eyes without blinking, as if he wanted to carve her into the depths of his bones and never let her go. The deep affection engraved in those eyes, even if the little fellow was someone who had lost her love and didn't feel anything at the moment, she could almost feel that something was wrong. It was too strong. Auber reached out her little hand and pushed Emolien's handsome face away. The lake breeze gently blew through his jade-white robe and his jade belt slightly fluttered in the wind. It was the same feeling he gave her at this moment, very ethereal and pure. What a strange man. Husband. She blinked her eyes. That silly little appearance fell into Emolien's eyes and was especially cute. Yes, husband. Arbor moved her little legs and thought in distress. This person had clearly been hindering her cultivation, but why couldn't she do anything to him? Logically speaking, anyone who hindered her cultivation should be erased, but Miss Chow didn't want to do anything to this person in front of her. Maybe it was because he was handsome. A golden drumstick that was roasted until it was glossy with oil suddenly waved in front of Arbor. Arbor blinked again and again. For a moment, she thought it was an illusion, so she reached out and pinched his jade-like cheek. "Does it hurt?" Darling Chow asked. "Hiss. What a strong hand." Emolien creased his good-looking brows and nodded honestly. Only then did Arbor snatch the drumstick and take a bite, wiping his oily little hands on his moon-white robe sleeve. Emolien chuckled, lowered his head and hugged her waist. He leaned over and kissed her white and tender little face, thinking to himself, no matter how his Jojo has changed, it's still his. Even if she didn't remember him for the time being, it didn't matter as long as she remembered him again. Moreover, Emolien suspected that the reason why Jojo had become like this was probably related to Ding Yun from Beijing Manor. Did Ding Yun give her some kind of medicine? It must be. Looking at that guy's wretched appearance, he must have fed his baby some medicine and then tried to force his baby to stay by his side. Yes, that's right. This must be the truth. No matter how quick-witted Emolien was, he probably wouldn't have thought of it. The reason why Arbor, this little fellow, became like this was all because of the disaster-courting talisman that she drew herself. Arbor finished eating the drumstick and wiped her oily little hands on his clean robe. Only then did she move her arms and legs, wanting to get out of his embrace and go into the water to continue cultivating. Chapter 1162. The taste of today's food wasn't bad. It was crispy and fragrant, unlike in the past where everything tasted like wax. Emolien's eyes were sharp and his hands were quick as he immediately saw through her intentions. He hugged her little body and whispered in her ear, "Baby, baby. Let's go home first." Arbor turned her little face to look at him as the voice in her heart kept urging her, "Cultivate, cultivate, cultivate." She also hurriedly cried out, "Cultivate, cultivate, cultivate." Emolien was stunned as he reached out to hold her hands and feet and hurriedly said, "All right, all right, all right, cultivate, cultivate, cultivate. How about I bring you back to the Eastern Palace to cultivate? That place has denser mystic energy than here." He had to coax her back first before anything else, Emolien secretly said in his heart. Arbor tilted her head at him as a faint dazed look flashed past her bright eyes. Eastern Palace to cultivate? What kind of place was that? Cultivate, cultivate, cultivate. All right, cultivate, cultivate. That place has denser mystic energy than here. Cultivating there is much faster than cultivating here at Juzi Lake. Darling Chow shook her head. Not going, I want to cultivate here. This person would hinder her cultivation. It would make her uneasy. Look, he was obstructing her right now. He was just too hateful. Emolien's face subconsciously darkened as he wrapped his arms around her waist and carried her up as he said firmly, "Let's go back to the palace." This time, no matter what, he had to put her right under his nose. He could let her do whatever she wanted, but not returning to the palace was out of the question. Darling Chow immediately got angry as she leaned on his shoulder, revealing her little white teeth as she bit him hard. This bite of her little teeth was just like scratching an itch. Emolien turned his head to look at her with an unusually determined expression. "Be good, let's go home first." The little fellow shook her head like a rattledrum. Humph. He actually yelled at her. Arbor was furious. She didn't know why, but she felt that this person wouldn't yell at her in the past. He had changed. He didn't love her anymore. It had to be known that although she had lost her 7 emotions and 6 desires and had her memories blocked, she was still subconsciously attracted to Emolien after interacting with him. In front of Prince Mo, she had always been a little emperor. Don't even mention being wronged, he had never even raised his voice. How dare he yell at her now? Darling Chow was very unhappy. She struggled to land on the rock, turned around, and simply faced him with the back of her head. Emolienne didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She reached out and pulled her little hand. She raised her arms and hugged her from behind. She whispered, "Baby, it's my fault. I shouldn't have been so loud. Don't be angry, okay?" Did he think that by saying a few nice words, she would not be angry? Darling Chow snorted inwardly and continued to ignore him. "Baby." Emolienne sighed softly. He grabbed her little hand and turned her body to face him. He raised his hand and caressed her soft little face. "Good Jojo, what can I do to appease your anger? Why don't you hit me? It'll be fine as long as your anger subsides." "Humph." Arbor raised her chin and rolled her eyes. Emolienne couldn't help but pull her into his embrace. His expression was somewhat melancholic as he said faintly, "Jojo, we haven't seen each other in a long time. Don't be angry with me. Do you know how much I've missed you during this period of time?" Ever since he found out that she had been transported out of the Mystic Beast Forest's secret realm, he was about to go crazy and searched for her all day long. "It's already 4 p.m. To be honest, I'm also rather dumbfounded. See you in a few hours." Chapter 1163. Now that he had finally found her, he would not let her go no matter what. Arbor's heart stirred slightly, but she still raised her head and looked at him with a serious expression. "Cultivate." Emolienne nodded. Okay, we'll go back and cultivate now." After saying that, he did not give her a chance to object. While carrying her, Emolienne's figure flashed towards the lakeshore. However, he thought to himself, his darling has turned into a cultivation maniac. What to do? It's so urgent. Cultivating every day, what should he do? What if on the day of the wedding, in the middle of the wedding ceremony, this baby suddenly told him to cultivate? How could he endure that? Emolienne carried his little girl with a melancholy expression and mounted the horse. After leaving the vicinity of Juzi Lake, they headed towards the direction of the Forbidden Palace. After leaving the Honghai Temple, they arrived at the main street. There were many people on the street, so Emolienne slowed down the speed of his horse. At this moment, a group of people came from the corner of the main street, and some people cheered. Emolienne pulled on the reins and frowned slightly. Carrying Arbor, he urged the horse to head towards the side of the road. He did not intend to meet with that group of people directly to avoid trouble. Cultivate. The little fellow tugged at his hair in dissatisfaction and muttered, "What a waste of time, she was in a hurry to cultivate now. Okay, cultivate, we'll go home and cultivate right away." Emolienne smiled and rubbed her head helplessly. His gaze followed the crowd and looked forward. On the street, a group of soldiers with neat military attire were holding long spears and driving the people to the sides of the road, creating a large road in the middle. The soldiers' long spears formed a line, blocking the crowd of people who were watching the commotion. On each of their young faces, there was an expressionless coldness. The sound of horse hooves could be heard. The people looked over excitedly, their eyes shining with anticipation. They saw a handsome young man around 25 years old on a fine horse with a jet-black mane slowly coming over. The man was abnormally tall and powerful. He carried a long spear on his back with his left hand and a horse's reins with his right hand. He wore a golden crown on his head and a pair of black boots with cloud patterns on his feet. On his angular face, there was a pair of stern eyes that were bright and full of expression. His tightly pursed lips did not reveal a trace of a smile. Instantly, a small commotion broke out in the crowd. Heavens, the vassal prince of Nan has returned to the capital. It's our invincible and victorious vassal prince of Nan. I heard that this time, the crown prince defeated the northern Qi kingdom and captured their princess and 2 princes. Ha, you've really raised the prestige of our great Mo kingdom. Look, those behind must be the Ding slaves of northern Qi. Smiles appeared on the faces of the commoners as they fell to their knees. Congratulations to the crown prince for his victory. The vassal prince of Nan, Cho Fu, was the first to arrive, accompanied by several valiant generals as he swaggered on his tall horse. Behind him were several hundred northern Qi Ding slaves in ragged clothes, their faces covered in grime, and their clothes were tied up with 2 to 3 ropes. Those Ding slaves, regardless of their age, gender, all had their right hands tied up with ropes. One by one, they formed a long line. The soldiers' whips chased after them from behind, shouting for them to hurry on their way. The young crown princess leaned into Lien's embrace with her eyes wide open. Seeing an old grandfather stumble and fall to the ground, the soldiers' whips mercilessly lashed out. In just a few moments, that old man was covered in blood, and his cries and shouts filled the street. On the other hand, the commoners on both sides of the street watched with relish. Chapter 1164. At this moment, 2 riders arrived at lightning speed. The eldest young master of the State Duke of Qing's estate, General of Public Might Shi Guangfeng, and a retainer cupped their fists toward the vassal prince of Nan, Cho Fu. General Hu Zhen, Feng has come to welcome the general's entourage under the great king's orders. Thank you for your trouble, General Shi. The vassal prince of Nan's stern expression remained unchanged as he nodded indifferently. Under the great king's orders, Northern Qi Kingdom's prisoners of war are to be temporarily escorted to the North Barracks prison and be under strict supervision. Vassal prince, please. Shi Guangfeng gestured as he inadvertently cast a glance in Prince Mo's direction. The vassal prince of Nan, Cho Fu, glanced at Shi Guangfeng indifferently and nodded before following him to the king's palace to meet the emperor. The young crown princess pointed at those prisoners of war in tattered clothes and looked up at Prince Mo, only to see him slightly narrowing his eyes as if he was pondering something. Husband? Prince Mo lowered his head to look at her and was secretly amused. He poked her small chin with his finger. What do you want to tell your husband? I don't like it. The young crown princess knitted her delicate brows in displeasure. Prince Mo was truly the person who understood his beloved wife the best in the world. Back then, when his darling was too lazy to speak a single word, he could instantly understand the baby's meaning through eye contact, not to mention now. The little fellow was saying that she didn't like those soldiers viciously bullying an old man who didn't have the strength to truss a chicken. Your husband also doesn't like it. Prince Mo immediately nodded and stood on his beloved wife's side without any moral integrity. Wait for your husband to return and understand the situation. Let's return to the palace first. Just as he was about to leave on his horse, he saw that the retainer that Shi Guangfeng brought along had a conflict with 2 high-ranking officers under the vassal prince of Nan's command. The retainer was called Shi Zheng, and he was an important subordinate of the General of Public Might, Shi Guangfeng. At this moment, Shi Zheng and the 2 high-ranking officers under the vassal prince of Nan's command were glaring at each other. If I say no, it means no. You can't take these 2 away. The vassal prince of Nan's subordinate, that middle-aged man with a wide mouth and nose, furiously said, These 2 people aren't captives from the northern Qi Kingdom. They are 2 mermen that our general captured and specially brought back to the capital. He planned to peel off their merman pearls and present them to his mother, Princess Anam. You can't take them away. The 2 mermaids were around 18 years old. They were wearing ragged white undergarments and had been hiding in the prison wagon, silently crying and trembling. How can you prove that these 2 are mermen? Shi Zheng said angrily, I have been ordered by the great king to escort all prisoners of war to the north camp. Are you going to defy the order? Bullshit. The man with a wide mouth and nose cursed. Do you not understand human language? I already said that these 2 women are not prisoners of war from northern Qi. The 2 of them were mermaids. This was because the shock pearl would lose its effect in less than an hour after it left the body. Therefore, our heir apparent specially escorted the 2 of them back to the capital and took an hour to extract the mermaid pearl from their bodies. Do you understand or not, huh? Old Jia, if this person doesn't believe us, then let him see for himself. Another young general with a wretched expression suddenly laughed. He tapped the whip in his hand and lashed it towards the prison cart. Slap. The whip landed on the prison wagon, and the tip of the whip ripped open the cloth covering one of the mermaid's legs, revealing a fair calf. Don't worry. You may see it as a leg now, but it will be a fishtail later, ha ha ha. That retainer still wanted to lash the whip over, but his eyes revealed a somewhat vulgar glint. Chapter 1165. Shi Zhong raised his hand to stop him with a sullen expression. We've already captured them, so there's no need to make things difficult for these two young ladies, right? That young general scoffed and crossed his arms as he looked at Shi Zhong provocatively. These are people that our general captured. What does it have to do with you? Take them away and escort them back to the prince's estate. At the young general's command, the old man driving the prison carriage brandished his whip. Shi Zhong blocked the carriage with his horse and sneered, "After entering the capital, they're all prisoners of war. Escort them all back to the North Barracks." "Shi Zhong, are you courting death?" The young General Nian Chong raised the whip in his hand with a frosty expression. "If you dare to block this young lord's path again, be careful that this whip doesn't have eyes." "Oh, how blind!" Prince Mo, who had spurred his horse over, replied leisurely. Everyone was startled when they turned to look. Shi Zhong immediately dismounted and knelt on one knee in greeting. "This general, Shi Zhong, greets your highness the crown prince." Prince Mo raised his hand slightly to have Shi Zhong rise. Then, his cold and sharp gaze shot towards the vassal prince of Nan's subordinates. The group of generals and soldiers led by old Jia and Nian Chong all lowered their heads and knelt down. However, Nian Chong's shifty gaze roved over Aber's face, and a trace of amazement flitted across his eyes. Aber tugged on the crown prince's hair and struggled to get him to let go. Then, she leaped onto the ground and quickly ran towards the prison carriage. Mo Lien helplessly glanced at his little wife. He raised his hand and released a burst of mystic energy, chopping off the copper lock on the prison carriage. The prison door opened, and Aber extended her small hand. Everyone turned to look at her, thinking that she was going to help the two pitiful young ladies out of the prison carriage. However, that was actually the case. Slap. Aber slapped one of the young ladies' head and reprimanded her as if she was scolding a child. "What are you crying for? All of you, shut up." Everyone, useless things, getting angry at the sight of them. Why were this group of mermen always so weak? Every day they would be captured by people. Every day, there would be people who wanted to kill them or cut them open to take their pearls and beautify them. All day long? Could it be that she had seen captured mermen before? Something flashed in Aber's mind, but it was so fast that she couldn't catch it. Those sealed memories were like a fleeting view. Every time she wanted to take a closer look, there was nothing left. What a strange feeling. The little fellow blinked his eyes. Seeing the two girls hugging their heads and sobbing inside the prison carriage, he couldn't help but go up and slap the other girl's head. He shouted rudely, "Come down by yourself." Mo Lien's lips twitched. Although his Bao couldn't remember anything for the time being, her violent nature hadn't changed at all. The two mermaids shivered and hugged their heads as they walked down from the prison cart. Their frightened eyes kept moving back and forth on Aber's body. With a shake of his hand, Aber took out two coats from his inner world and threw them to the two of them. The two girls hurriedly received them and put them on while expressing their thanks repeatedly. Aber turned and walked a few steps. When she turned back and saw that the two fools were still rooted to the ground, she couldn't help but shout at them, "Come here." The two mermaids trembled slightly and hurriedly followed. However, they hadn't taken 2 steps when they saw Nian Chong straighten his body halfway and reach out to block their path. "No. This is to be brought back to the vassal king of Nan's estate." "Nian Chong!" Old merchant shouted at him, meaning for him to quickly shut up. Chapter 1166. Nian Chong shut his mouth in annoyance, but his hand gesture was very obvious as he continued to block those two mermaids. A strange emotion surfaced in Aber's mind. The long-lost anger that was missing from the 7 emotions and 6 desires had returned, Arbor angrily glared at those two submissive mermaids and roared at them again, "Come here! Everyone, why the hell did they feel that the little girl before them was inexplicably adorable?" Those two mermaids immediately moved at Arbor's command and hastily trotted over. When they saw Nyen Chong blocking their path, they also used all their strength to push him aside. Clip-clop, clip-clop, clip-clop. The two men dismounted from their horses when they were only a few steps apart. "Little junior sister, you're fine." Situ-Yi and Duan-Yu, who had rushed over after receiving the news, quickly walked toward Arbor. Mo Lien face-bombed exasperatedly. Sure enough, he saw his little fellow turn to glance at Duan-Yu and Situ-Yi before rolling her eyes and turning her face away. "Duan-Yu. Mo Lien, why did Jojo roll her eyes at me?" Duan-Yu simply didn't dare to believe his eyes. How many years had it been since she rolled her eyes at him? Ever since he suffered at her hands at Kwoto Village's Hulun Mountain, they reconciled not long after. What was the meaning of this eye roll? Mo Lien simply didn't want to bother with him, but when she saw Situ-Yi looking over curiously, she explained dryly, "She doesn't even recognize me right now, so what do you think?" "What?" Duan-Yu looked at Mo Lien in shock before looking at the little fellow. "Little junior sister, you got skinnier. How did you get skinnier after going to the mystic realm? Now that you're back, hurry and have Prince Amo properly nourish your body." Situ-Yi was still nagging at the side, but Arbor didn't even look at him out of the corner of her eye. "Little junior sister. Little junior sister?" Situ-Yi paced back and forth beside her and finally received an impatient look from the little fellow. "So funny, who is this person?" He was so long-winded that she had no idea what he was talking about. Situ-Yi clearly understood the meaning in the little fellow's eyes, and could only remain silent. However, Duan-Yu laughed out loud and pushed him away. "Go away. Let me." Mo Lien sneered. "Do you think she can recognize you just because you're here?" Duan-Yu arrived in front of Arbor in a single stride. He took out a small square box and opened it before handing it to her. "Look, this is my newly developed large-scale firearm, the Nine Thunder Jade Heavens. It's extremely powerful. I've tried it before. It's really fun. It's even more interesting than the core ravaging thunder. The fire it shoots out can bounce very far. If you call me, I'll give it to you and teach you how to play with it." Situ-Yi and Mo Lien both turned to look at him. Did this guy have any shame at all when he spoke like he was trying to trick a child? This Nine Thunder Jade Heavens was emerald green and round, and there was even a small emerald green bamboo tube that could be locked tightly beside it. It looked quite novel. Arbor glanced at that wooden box before reaching over and closing the lid with a bang. She silently snatched the small box from Duan-Yu's hands and silently stuffed it into her inner world. That small action was done smoothly, as if this Nine Thunder Jade Heavens belonged to her in the first place. Chapter 1167. Duan-Yu was taken aback and exclaimed in exasperation, "You haven't called me yet." Mo Lien. Situ-Yi couldn't resist bursting into laughter. "Don't be silly, I already said I don't know you. Prince Amo, may I ask why little junior sister doesn't know who you are? When will she recover? Is there a need to ask? It must be that punk from Beijing Manor's doing." Duan-Yu said without hesitation. He must have wanted to bring the little fellow back to Beijing Manor to hide her, but who knew that he would encounter us on the way? "That can't be, right?" Situ-Yi grumbled. Mo Lien and Duan-Yu both ignored him because they both happened to be thinking the same thing. No matter how quick-witted these two were, they absolutely wouldn't have thought that Miss Chiao was the one who courted disaster and caused today's situation. "All right, Jojo, let's go home first." Mo Lien bent down to extend her hand. Arbor looked at him seriously and corrected, "Cultivate." Right, cultivate. Let's go home and cultivate." Mo Lien nodded and waved at her with a grin. It was only then that Arbor placed her small hand in his. In the next instant, she felt her body lighten as she landed sideways on the horse and leaned into his embrace. "Cultivate what?" Duan Yu glanced at the little fellow in confusion. How come he didn't know that Jojo was so diligent? There are so many things you don't know. The Crown Prince gave him a figure-it-out-yourself look. He immediately praised his Bao Bao. Our Jojo has been extremely diligent recently. Do you know, her current cultivation is almost catching up to her senior brother Situ. Situ Yi's eyes widened as he sneaked a glance at Arba. Little junior sister, you're so awesome. Darling Qiao understood the word awesome, and gave Situ Yi a tsundere look as she nodded. Situ Yi then chuckled and pointed at Arba. Look, little junior sister is paying attention to me. What a clown. Emolian and Duan Yu both rolled their eyes at him. Prepare 2 horses for the 2 of them. Emolian turned to Shi Zhong and ordered. Shi Zhong immediately cupped his fists and agreed. He ordered 2 of his subordinates to dismount and lead the horses to the 2 mermaids. The 2 mermaids hurriedly got on their horses and held the reins tightly. They stole a glance at Arba. What are you looking at? Keep up. Arba yelled at the 2 of them. He wanted to get angry whenever he saw them. Weakling. The 2 women's bodies trembled slightly, but they quickly and obediently followed after him. Seeing this, Nian Chong hurriedly stood up and said, Please wait. Nian Chong. Old merchant pulled him back, but he couldn't stop his impulsive temper. Pa! A green vine whip abruptly darted out from Qiao Mu's sleeve and lashed at Nian Chong's shoulder without any room for objection. This sudden change caused everyone to raise their heads in shock. Their gazes changed slightly as they looked at her. How dare you? Arba rebuked angrily, her face icy. The Crown Princess will accept these 2 women. Do you have any objections? Emo Lien's indifferent gaze swept across everyone present. The vassal prince of Nan's soldiers all lowered their heads under this intimidating pressure. None of them dared to object. Crown Princess? She was that vicious and merciless Crown Princess? A furious glint flitted across Nian Chong's eyes as he recalled what Princess Anam had once mentioned to him. His elder brother, Nian Kuei, seemed to have died tragically at the hands of this Crown Princess. Chapter 1168. This person's methods were extremely vicious. Just because Commandery Princess Hui and had a small conflict with her, she was willing to destroy a wisp of her brother's soul in order to murder Commandery Princess Hui En, causing the explosion to affect Commandery Princess Hui En? Nian Chong clutched the wound on his shoulder with one hand and braced himself to put on a righteous expression. Of course, the Crown Princess can have these 2 mermaids if she wants them. However, is it possible for Crown Prince Consort to promise this general that if this general takes out 2 shark pearls, please gift one to the vassal king consort of Nan so that our vassal prince can express filial piety to his mother? When the 2 mermaids heard this, they immediately looked at Arba in horror. Could it be that the 2 of them escaped from the wolf's den and fell into the tiger's den again? Arba glowered at Nian Chong, her almond-shaped eyes practically spitting fire. She was very angry, but she did not know why. Suddenly, a vine whip lashed out at that person's mouth. Nian Chong's pupils contracted upon seeing this, and he reflexively dodged to the side, avoiding that vine whip. But then, another vine whip swiftly landed on his arm, shattering the wrist guard on his arm in an instant. A glaring whip mark appeared on his tanned arm. It was so deep that bone could be seen, and blood spurted out. Old Merchant and the others all sucked in a cold breath. They were apprehensive about the little Crown Princess's ruthless methods and her frightening cultivation. Hubby, kill him. The young Crown Prince consort suddenly turned her small face around and shouted at Emolian in a huff. She had only lost some of her common sense due to her memories being blocked, but she was not truly stupid. It was clear at a glance who was showing her kindness and who was showing her malice. Duan Yu's mouth twitched, and he glared at Emolian beside him in displeasure. You told her that you are her hubby? Is it not so? Emolian cast him a glance before reaching out his large palm to rub the young Crown Prince consort's head soothingly. Okay, let's kill him. He knew her too well and knew why she was angry. Nian Chong was really bold. He actually dared to use words against his little wife. His words were indirectly telling others that the reason the crown princess had saved the two mermaids was to take the mermaid pearls from their bodies. This was simply slander. Auber was naturally angry. She didn't want the shark pearl. How could something like that be beautifying? If she wanted to beautify her looks, she could just eat the beautifying pills. She could make a big pot of them herself. Why would she need the shark pearls? The crown prince waved his hand, and a few nimble figures suddenly appeared beside Nien Chong, pressing him down onto the ground. Nien Chong cried out in pain. Only now did he reveal some fear in his heart. Nien Chong. Old merchant and the rest looked over in shock. They hurriedly knelt a few steps forward and cupped their fists at Prince Amo, begging for mercy. Your Highness, please calm down. Nien Chong is just a little impulsive. He doesn't disrespect the crown princess. Oh, he doesn't have disrespect? Emolien glanced at Nien Chong coldly. But why did this crown prince hear dissatisfaction and reprimand in his words? Nien Chong struggled hard and shouted, Your Highness is wise. This general doesn't have such intentions. This general has followed the Lord Vassal Prince for many years and has fought all over the country. Not long ago, we even won a complete victory against Northern Qi. This general is loyal to the great king with a pure heart. The sun and moon can testify to this general's loyalty, and only the heavens can testify. Chapter 1169. This punk was reminding him that he had just returned to the capital after a victorious battle with the vassal prince of Nan. If he killed him on the streets, it would chill the soldiers' morale and might even cause the people's dissatisfaction. Emolien curled her lips and suddenly smiled. Although she had a smile on her face, her eyes flickered with an abnormally icy glint. Let this monarch tell you something. Emolien's eyes flickered, and she sneered, If this monarch wants you to die today, then you definitely won't be able to see tomorrow's sun. Raising his eyelids slightly, he nodded at the two secret guards in acknowledgement. The latter's sword suddenly slid across Nien Chong's neck so quickly that he didn't have any room to maneuver. His body slid heavily to the ground, and his eyes were wide open as he died with remaining grievances. On the side, Old Merchant and the others also felt a bone-chilling coldness rising from the soles of their feet. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly and could only sneak glances at the crown prince. The tens of millions of people on the streets all slowed their breathing and knelt there with their heads bowed, not even daring to look up. When His Highness the Crown Prince raged, corpses truly littered the ground. No one dared to face His Highness's wrath directly. Go, investigate this person's evil deeds and publicize it in the central plaza so that everyone knows, the Crown Prince ordered indifferently. Yes. Summon Censor Li and Censor Chen for this monarch. This monarch wants to submit a memorial to the great king and report the vassal prince of Nan for not managing his troops well. Everyone, as expected, the Crown Prince the Great was a vengeful person. The vassal prince of Nan had just returned to the capital, so he probably hadn't even warmed up his seat at the great king's and was about to be reported by His Highness the Crown Prince. Dunyu almost laughed out loud and turned his horse around. I didn't come here in vain today. He watched a pretty good show. Prince Amo glanced at Shi Zhong again. What are you spacing out for? Take these Northern Qi prisoners of war to the North Camp. If anyone dares to obstruct us, this monarch permits you to kill them. Yes, this general obeys. Shi Zhong's spirits were lifted. He immediately called for his subordinates to take over the prisoners in the hands of Old Merchant and the others, escorting them to the North Camp outside the city. Let's return to the palace. Prince Amo narrowed his eyes and turned his horse to leave. After a long time, the petrified Old Merchant and the others on the street finally moved slightly and looked at each other in dismay. The crowd dispersed, and no one dared to look at the corpse on the ground. Although the vassal prince of Nan was quite formidable after coming back victorious, his subordinates couldn't be so rude and contradicting in front of His Highness the Crown Prince. To be executed by His Highness in a fit of anger, he could only blame his bad luck. their crown prince was no ordinary person. Not to mention a mere vassal prince of Nan. Perhaps even the venerable vassal king of Nan wouldn't dare to be so impudent in front of Her Highness. After the crown prince carried Aber back to the palace, he first sent a message to the Xiao family to explain the situation and appease them. Then, he had someone bring Xiao Yao over to serve her. However, once the little girl arrived at this unfamiliar place, she looked left and right to find a cultivation spot. After searching for a long time, she glared at the crown prince accusingly. Okay, we'll go cultivate in a bit. Let's eat first. You'll only have the strength to properly cultivate after eating. My Jojo, you've lost so much weight from hunger. If I knew earlier, I wouldn't have let you go to the Mystic Beast Forest Mystic Realm to train in that damned place. Chapter 1170. Aber glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. Husband. Emolien was overjoyed. He gave himself 10,000 likes in his heart. How could he have been so quick-witted that day? He had whispered into the little girl's ear, I'm your husband, I'm your husband. It had worked. This silly little girl probably thought that his name was Hubby. Ha ha ha. The little girl had been so obedient throughout the journey. She had called him hubby every time she opened her mouth. Hearing her made him happy and comfortable. Coming. Dinner is here. Xiao Yao directed a row of junior palace maids as they walked in with plates of dinner. As she busied herself with setting the table, she nagged, Miss, why have you lost so much weight? Have you been eating all this time? Aber naturally ignored her. Her eyes were glued to the plates of food that were being brought in. Tap, tap, tap. The little girl strode towards the table. Her fair and tender little hand reached out towards a crispy roasted goose leg. Xiao Yao. Emolien gave her a look. Xiao Yao understood and turned around. She said to the junior palace maids, You can leave first. Yes. Xiao Yao turned around again and saw her little master gnawing on a roasted goose leg. She couldn't help but wipe the corners of her eyes. How long has my miss been hungry? She didn't even bother to pick up her chopsticks. She was so hungry that she just grabbed it with her bare hands. How pitiful. Aber took 2 bites. Her eyes glanced at the braised pork shoulder on the plate next to her. Her little hand stealthily reached for it again. Emolien went forward and took her little hand. Let's wash our hands first. As he spoke, he took the greasy roasted goose leg from her hand and pulled her to wash her hands. When they came back from washing, Aber grunted at him. Her eyes looked meaningfully at a plate of prawns in the distance. Hence, Emolien carried that plate over and helped her grab the shrimp with his hands. As he peeled the shrimp to feed her, he asked absent-mindedly, Chow Chow, do you still remember my name? Aber nodded vigorously and swallowed the prawn that he had peeled. Husband. That's right. Emolien went up to her with a smile and kissed her on the cheek. Don't forget about it in the future. Aber nodded obediently. Xiao Yao, who was watching from the side, rolled her eyes speechlessly. His Highness was too black-bellied, bullying their family's young miss for being so dim-witted. Previously, His Highness had only told her that Miss had been harmed by Ding Yun from Beijing Manor. Now that she had returned, she had forgotten a lot of things from the past. Looking at it now, it was true. Your Highness, do you need chopsticks? Xiao Yao handed over a pair of silver chopsticks and asked with a light cough. I don't want it. Our Jojo likes to eat with her hands. I'll accompany her. Emolien waved his hand nonchalantly and caught a fish for her in passing, which she had been staring at the entire time. Xiao Yao was speechless. No, she had to keep a lookout outside. If Her Majesty the Queen came and saw this, she would be furious. Her son, such an outstanding and perfect son, was going crazy with his wife all day long. Jojo, is it good? Emolien saw that she was eating happily and couldn't help but feel happy. Qiao Mu nodded and wiped her small hand on his sleeve while she was at it. Crown Prince Emo pursed his lips and said, You wiped me all over with oil, so you have to bathe together with me in a bit. Let's bathe together, okay, Jojo, Jojo, Jojo? You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.